Welcome to the World in Focus podcast. I am your host, His Excellency Ambassador Professor Dr. Adrian Daisley, where we dive deep into the global challenges, exploring stories, solutions, and also ideas that are shaping history. In this episode, we'll unveil the global challenges that face us in the world of artificial intelligence. We're not alone in our quest to understand how this technology is going to affect us. And so we've invited a special distinguished guest. His name is Dr. Curtis Charles. He is the Dean and Director of Academic Affairs at the University of the West Indies Five Islands campus. He actively oversees multiple schools, including the School of Science, Computing and Artificial Intelligence, the School of Business and Management, the School of Humanities and Education, the School of Health and Behavioral Sciences. He is Doctor, I would like to begin with an icebreaker question.
Yep.
Can you take us through a pivotal moment or experience in your career journey that has significantly contributed to your impressive success?
Great question. I think for me, for most people who know my story, pivotal for me was failing common entrance at 11 back in the day that we used to call it common entrance, where in those days, if you fail common entrance, you're considered doomed to society. And I failed common entrance. Didn't have a chance to go to traditional high school like everybody else, and got the opportunity at 17 years old, the age that most students are coming out of high school, and had the opportunity to go to evening class. Had to work on the street to earn the money to pay for the evening classes, and then 2 years later, I had the requirements to be accepted into the University of Miami, Ohio State University, Washington State University, and Howard University, and the rest is history. I went to Howard and then went on to MIT to do my graduate degree, and went on to Morgan State to do my Ph.D. and Northwestern University to do another master's degree in predictive analytics. Yeah, so
Wow.
failing failing at 11 was probably my pivotal moment to being the educator I am and being curious about just student success and making that my commitment.
Wow, Doctor. Yeah, I know, and I've had an opportunity to speak to you on occasions outside of the interview space. Why is it increasingly essential for individuals, organizations, and societies at large to develop such a comprehensive understanding of artificial intelligence?
Well, great question. Artificial intelligence is one of those things that for many of us, it isn't new, right? It's one of those elements that have been around since the 50s. And for us, it has grown. What has really been the defining factor was the price of computing prices plummeted and the algorithms have gotten better. So for example, deep learning is the algorithms upon which those those large language models that, for example, that you see ChatGPT and Claude and some others are being run on.
Right.
Deep learning was basically the catalyst to that. And as you would know, within the last year, ChatGPT has basically revolutionized the art of the possible for large language models. So I think for almost all organizations, I think it makes there are concerns about the technology, but it also makes you much more productive. I know that I am much more productive in what I do every day. I'm using some of these large language models that I was exposed to while I was at Microsoft. But I think it
Right.
is important that every organization have the opportunity to know what these technologies and know how it is going to impact them now and in the future.
Doctor, according to Mekenzie, artificial intelligence is expected to disrupt 4.5 million jobs for African Americans, who face 10% higher risk of automation-based job loss in the general population. So how can we address significant disparities in the impact of artificial intelligence on the workforce, especially considering that Black men without college degrees are particularly vulnerable to job loss?
Yeah, great question. I mean, so I think this is actually, if I put on my entrepreneurship hat for a moment, I think that this is a great opportunity for universities. This is a great opportunity for HBCUs, and this is great opportunities for universities that focus on educating people from the diaspora. We need to engage in massive retraining and reskilling. We know that people are going to be displaced. We know the statistics coming from Mekenzie and some of the other research organizations. It's quite prolific numbers that we're talking about in terms of being a shift. We have the opportunity right now to make that adjustment in terms of training. The challenge with universities is that they also have to have a shift in thinking because universities normally up here, right? And they say, well, the community college is going to take care of folks down here. But we really need to reach down to society and pull people up and basically offer short-term reskilling credentialing, micro credentialing. It's so somebody might want to do something in the coding, or somebody might want to change their skill set, or want to basically learn how to do machine learning so that they could be a little bit more skill proof in their jobs. I mean, those are really great opportunities for universities all over who has been struggling after COVID, because a number of them, instead of using the technologies and the great knowledge we learned how to teach during the COVID period, a number of them went back face to face, and I think that is a mistake. So I think in terms of getting back some of that market share, reaching out and beginning to do reskilling, credentialing, especially for the populations in the diaspora that's being affected, is going to be really important for universities.
Doctor, you have a wealth of wisdom, knowledge, and experience. How do you begin in architecture and finish in academics?
No, so that's a great question. My wife asks me that question all the time. I mean, how do you go to architecture school for 5 years and the program at Howard is 5 years? And how do you go to MIT to deepen that research in architecture research studies and not practice? For me, so I would always say that architecture, if I have to come into this world, if I'm blessed to come back into this world 100 times, I'll do architecture.
Well,
Architecture is the ultimate liberal arts degree. I mean, everything in life, we have to solve problems. I mean, we have to solve problems in almost every job that we do. In architecture, you have a client, and that client needs you to, let's take something as simple as design a house. You have to know, now go and visit the physical site. You have to do geological tests to see whether there's any water, oil, or whatever. Because you have to dig a foundation. You have to dig a foundation and build that structure that's going to hold the platform so they can build the house on. But before you build, you have to look at the views. Does this person like to? So this is what we call programming. We're gathering information. It's the first part of design thinking. What views they need to look at? Do they like to be close to the bedroom when they eat? Do they need to be in the living room? Do they need to look at the skies when they lay down in the bed? All those things are behavioral patterns and trends, and it's amazing. It's all AI, because AI is basically using big data to run algorithms to understand the patterns and trends. So if you take the house and you extrapolate that to a housing community, and we say that the house, you're developing a plan development for 200 families, and you could take the form that they fill out when they come in. Where do you live? Where do you work? What do you like? Blah, blah, blah. And you could put that in a repository and run algorithms on that. Now you could see patterns and trends and behaviors of how each family want to live. And now, instead of giving them a generic house, now it could be a house that is precisionally designed for that person's behavior. And so to me, starting from architecture, going into higher education administration and predictive analytics, in my mind, it all connects, because I think an architect sees the world in kaleidoscope. I mean, we don't see one dimension. We are trained to see what nobody else sees.
interesting.
So we're not normally the most popular person in the room. I mean, because we kind of like, people think we're kind of weird, but we are well trained. And so I think my foundational training at Howard University prepared me well to go through the path to become a university president and to help build this unique university in the Caribbean. I mean, the University of West
Well,
Indies is 75 years old, but this campus is only 4 years old, and we were born at the birth of the fourth industrial revolution. And what a time to be alive. We have an opportunity to redefine what the university is as we go into the fifth industrial revolution.
Doc, I've got an opportunity to see some of your interviews that you would have given both in podcast as well as in corporate. I want to ask you, what strategies and initiatives can governments and organizations implement to help individuals who might be most vulnerable to negative impact from artificial intelligence automation, particularly those marginalized in our communities?
I'm criticized a lot for seeing the glass half full when it comes to artificial intelligence, because I think it could help our marginalized communities so much, man. I mean, I think, listen, man, I mean, we have a tool that wasn't exposed to us. I mean, the analogy I give when I talk about this part and marginalized population is what is happening now in tennis. Man, listen, when I was growing up, it was unheard of to see somebody like Venus or Coco on the court. I mean, Venus
Oh.
Williams and Serena's father kicked down that door for every Bronx person that came. I mean, he didn't just open the door, he just kicked down the door for all of us that came after, all families who see the art of the possible. I
Right.
think when you think about artificial intelligence, and that's a differentiator for all the young kids who want to be there. When I think about artificial intelligence for marginalized communities, because both Venus, Serena, and Coco comes from, and the other young women of color and young men of color come from marginalized populations. When I think about what artificial intelligence has for us right now, I mean, we could really think about our communities, think about our cities. Most of our, I sit in Antigua right now, more cars than probably people. A little bit of exaggeration, but it takes me forever to get to work. We're a marginalized community, right? I mean, but we could take the database of all the cars on the streets on mornings, run algorithms, and within this island filled of tourism and potential, and some of the greatest cricketers that and Calypsonians that came out of the region, we could now run algorithms to redefine and reposition the traffic on mornings so that people could get where they want instead of being congested. Simple way. We have, when you think about when you think about what happened with the pandemic, marginalized communities were devastated with the
Yeah.
pandemic, right?
Still are. Yeah.
So if I could just, and I would say that we were devastated not so much for a lack of of supplies. I think we had the supplies. This is a lack of infrastructure. Let's take a
Logistics.
simple example. In many hospitals alone, the IT systems doesn't talk to each other. What happened to us is that if we take, for example, where I sit in the OECS region, within the Antiguan hospital, their systems weren't talking to each other, right?
Well,
The system in Antigua wasn't talking to the system in St. Kitts. The system in St. Kitts wasn't talking to the system in Martinique, or the system in Martinique wasn't talking to the system in St. Lucia. So if there is a need for supplies in St. Lucia, we don't know. Now think about artificial intelligence. We could, and we're working on a platform like this with York University. We could now design an interoperability platform whereby all these systems could come into a central docking station, right? So that now we speak to each other. And if we had that in the pandemic, we could know what are the resources in each one of the different islands and redirect those resources in real time.
yeah.
That could have saved lives because that would have gotten there in time. So that's the power of this thing, man. I see artificial intelligence very much like Venus and Serena father as it relates to minority population. I mean, we just need a few people who understand this technology
Yes.
who could help us and make sure that we have the leaders. We don't need, like one of my colleagues mentioned to me over the weekend. He said, "Curtis, you don't need a lot of people. You need a few people who understand this technology, who are well connected with other people, who are
Yes.
connected with other people who have an interest in making sure that the diaspora take advantage of this." Now, saying all that, are there going to be losers? In every in every revolution, when we move from the industrial revolution where we had a donkey cart and then we went to the cars. The man who had the donkey cart was saying the cars were the devil, right? He was saying, well, man, if you drive them cars, so and so going to happen. When we move from oil to electricity, the man who was in charge of the oil says, man, if you turn on that electricity, you're going to be blown up. There's always, every time we have moved from one society to another, one industrial revolution to another, there have been these issues. But in each opportunity, each phase of movement, industrial revolution, there was always an opportunity for the universities and tertiary educations because we
Right.
have to educate differently. We cannot, we are 75 years old. We are celebrating 75 years. It is impossible for Five Island campus to operate the same way when was founded 75 years ago. We can't have the same academic programs. The needs have been different. We went through like 3 different industrial revolutions to where we are now. So we have taken the sense that, look, when we look at the OECS region, we think that artificial intelligence could be a serious force multiplier, as the military would say. We could basically, we could improve in almost every conceivable area, but healthcare would always put at the top because more of our people in the Caribbean die of non-communicable diseases than the pandemic. So
Yes.
we could, we have a colleague I talked to last week, said, Charles, I want to work with you. She just got a fellowship to go to France next year, where she's studying how could she use artificial intelligence to help women who are suffering with cervical cancer. Right?
Wow.
If we, I
Okay.
mean, and this is a
Yeah.
young Jamaican sister, and she is amazing. This is just one example of how we could use this technology to really revolutionize and give our people a competitive edge.
Doc, I wish to pivot at this point in time because you mentioned something in your explanation earlier. You talked about the art of the impossible.
I'll be
And
possible, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, of the possible or impossible.
I'll be possible, but it could go both ways because it ends up the same place.
Right. In the context of the workforce transformation that we are witnessing right now, and that is going to be sped up after we have China doing what it's doing right now with global with global markets and logistics. What specific efforts are required then to address the
Well,
skill gap?
yeah, I want to answer your question this way because you mentioned China, which is very, very important to this conversation. Listen, I have crazy respect for what China has done over the last 6 years. In 2016, Google developed deep learning AlphaGo to play the world's greatest champion in the game Go. So for
Yes.
everybody who's listening, if you
Yeah.
don't know what Go is, it should be on your table and you should be training your children and you should be playing the game. This is a 4,000 year game
Yeah.
that the Chinese hold sacred because it's how they teach strategy and how they teach discipline. It's like sacred to them. There was no doubt in 2016 that the human was going to beat this little algorithm, that deep mind
Yes.
that Google created. Listen, this guy won one, I think, out of 5 or 6 games, right?
Yeah.
Shock
Yeah.
wave to China.
Another level.
Xi Jinping, the head of China, called a conference, I think, a year later with world leaders packed, and he promised that by 2025, China is going to equal the United States on artificial intelligence, and by 2030, they're going to surpass them. Listen, put a pin in that a little bit. That was China's Sputnik moment.
Yes.
Go back a few years when IBM Watson defeated the best Jeopardy player. The most that happened is that we spoke about it in the US for a few weeks.
Right.
It moved zero needle,
Well,
right? I'm going to say zero, not compared to what has happened with China. Listen, the reason why China would surpass the US is very mathematically simple. There are more people in China than in the United States. And data is what drives artificial intelligence. And people is where China is pulling all that data from. So they could basically do as much tests, develop new products and services, and learn about behaviors, and then they could extrapolate that to the populations in where they have invested. One of the things I tell my colleagues is that if you think this is a fad, think about how many countries within the diaspora that China is rooted. China is
Yeah.
rooted. Listen, when I was growing up, there was a Chinaman shop at the corner. I don't know how he got to Trinidad, but
Right.
he was there. Then his son took over. Then his son children took over. They're everywhere. So China is not going to just have this technology and not transport it. And that's what a country has done. And there are pluses and minuses in how they use the technology, like everybody else. But what I wanted to illustrate was the will of a people based on a Sputnik moment, right? When you see, we're not moving in the US like we did when Russia sent up Sputnik, and then we said we need to get the man to the moon as really fast as possible.
Right.
Because we're not seeing, and I think one of the things that I loved when I was at Microsoft is Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, always used to talk about the democratization of artificial intelligence. We need to democratize it because for most people, it's only being held and
Specific. Yeah.
understood by a small group of people. So the more we could have discussions like this and democratize the whole discussion and the meaning of what this is, the more people could get accustomed to it. But it is important that we look at China as an example. It's important that we look at what other developing nations are doing. But I hold the example of China really dear because man, we played gay at we have a game of Go. We have Go. We played online. My wife and myself played on the boards. My kids played. I mean, but we never took it that seriously,
Right.
right? This guy who was the champion, he thought, I mean, he said, "There's no way this machine could beat me."
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
come back to the art of the possible. The art of the possible at that seminal moment was if a machine could beat a human in a game,
Yes.
then a machine
Imagine.
could
Yeah.
drive a car without somebody else. Then
Yes.
a machine could do X without somebody. Listen, so the art of the possible just opened up. And this is what is happening in this. And what I want to do is to make sure that our folks in the diaspora are not left behind. Because listen,
Yes.
the only thing that's different, and I say this all the time, the only thing that's different to our students on our campus who are interested in technology is the color of the skin. They don't see me, they don't see other tech entrepreneurs. So,
Right.
so that's the whole impetus of having this conference next year. So we could bring to this campus people from the diaspora who are leading in technology, especially those from the Caribbean who are leading in technology. So our students could see that, look, they have done it too. They are working at Meta and they are working at DeepMind. And so the skill gap is going to continue unless the university step. I think it's a huge opportunity for tertiary education
Right.
to basically step down and make sure that we use the intellectual property, especially if you're a public institution. If you're a public institution, you have a right to basically help society. So definitely for public institution to make sure that we help reskill. It's not going to make us rich and wealthy, but it's going to make the population much more sustainable based on this technology.
And as you're talking about social response, corporate social responsibility, this is where my idea is. My thoughts are that, you're organizing the University of the West Indies inaugural Artificial Intelligence Research Conference in 2020.
Mhm.
What are the key objectives and that you anticipate? What outcomes are you looking at for this conference? And how do you envision the event contributing to the advancement of AI research?
Yeah, great question, man. Listen, we have a number of expected outcomes that we measure against, and on top of that, at the beginning of that is that it's probably the first AI conference of its kind in the Caribbean,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
When I think about that, I think about also 75 years. That the university has been around 75 years. This university here has been around. We're going in our fifth year, so we are 4 years old.
Wow.
To be able to do this in our fourth year is a testament
Remarkable.
to the leadership that started this university and a testament to the support of the government in the region and a testament to the faculty, staff, and students of this campus. I mean, we believe that there is no, we have no limitations, right?
Right, right. Yeah.
So the first thing we did was I came in 2020, and I needed to develop a strategic plan, academic affairs strategic plan. And part of that academic affairs strategic plan was to launch, have a fourth industrial revolution conference. And that just collided with the progress that has been happening in AI. So we merged instead of the fourth industrial revolution. What we really want to do is to reimagine the digital transformation of the Caribbean in an
Interesting.
age of AI and the fifth industrial revolution. And the fifth industrial revolution is just human beings interacting with machines and artificial intelligence and machine learning and sensors and robotics and stuff. So the first thing we did was we said, look, let's just do a search to see where are Caribbean people in tech, because we know we lead in tech. There's no way that Caribbean people, as talented as we are, cannot be leaders in all the tech industries. And man, we were blown away. I mean, we
Wow.
did a search and we just started calling. And then as we call, people would say, Dr. Charles, I've been thinking about doing this for a long time myself, but
Okay.
haven't done it.
Wow.
I would love, let me introduce you to X, Y, and Z. And it just has blossomed. I mean, it has just blossomed because what people realize is that this is a window for us. And I've always said that the opportunity of a lifetime is had in the lifetime of that opportunity. So for me, we are looking forward for this, but the university has what is called a revenue revolution right now, where we're looking at different ways to raise funds. Look, one of the key elements of this conference is to basically have the opportunity where every panel becomes a panel that could help us move a grant or contract. So there's one team that's looking throughout the world to see what are the opportunities in AI in climate change, for example.
Right, right.
If they identify those grants, then the people on the panel, the scholars from across the world, will then work with our faculty to help move that forward. So if we have 8 panels, we are looking at 8 potential grant opportunities globally that these scholars
Wow.
could help us with. So that's how we're looking at it from financial. We have just added the ministerial pre-conference panel, where we want to bring ministers from different Caribbean nations who are interested in telecommunication and digital transformation and
Okay.
education, who could really talk about and I have to tell you, I was in Barbados. Two things happened to me in Barbados early on the 27th. I was there for a short while, and I met your Minister of Education. I was totally blown away. The first thing she told me is that she's a STEM person. So I said, we need you on
Yeah,
the
she
education
is.
part.
She is,
And then
yeah.
the night I was at the Sir Frank Worrell lecture, and your PM was the person who did the lecture. Am I
Okay.
right? So from July to now, so I hope this reaches the PMS. From July to now, we have been working diligently with her chief of staff to try and see if we can get a PM, because we think that this is the type of conference
Of
that
course.
she has really talked about globally, because I know she's interested in AI for good, and everything we are looking at is that. So we want this. This is one of the things. One of the goals that we don't want is for techies to be talking to themselves.
Okay.
So every panel must have government, industry, and academia. Because if we can have that triple helix, then we will have the opportunity to really collaborate, move the technology forward, transform the Caribbean. But in order to transform, you need government policy. So we're looking at the Prime Minister of Grenada, who has been really progressive in moving his nation, and the Prime Minister before him in terms of digital transformation. So there's some ministers besides those within the OECS and premiers within the OECS that we definitely want to be here. I mean, this is not this is a unique opportunity, right? I mean, we research because we're a research institution, but really that research will then pave the way for implementation. For example, Antigua, as well as many nations, need to beef up um, their data regulations, right? And privacy and stuff. We could help with that. As an institution, we have scholars on campus who could help those countries develop robust digital data regulations where somebody can't just use your data at any willy-nilly. So I think, whether it's non-communicable AI, non-communicable diseases, AI in communicable diseases, AI in sustainability, food sustainability,
Right.
AI in agriculture. We are looking at a diverse set of areas that we think are pain points to the Caribbean, where this technology could be used as a force multiplier. That's our major focus. And an antidote of that, icing on the cake of that, is for our students to see the Caribbean people who are leading in technology. Look, here what could come out of that. They could be the next, I don't even want to say the next Bill Gates, because I think we could be better than Bill Gates, right? I mean, I think, look, we're not going to have, I believe that out of this conference could realize what I wanted when they asked me, why do you want to leave the United States to come here? I
Yes.
said, because I believe that this university and the people of the Caribbean, we could spin off the Silicon Islands of the Caribbean. And I truly believe that with the type of and caliber of scholars and government agencies and ministers and head of states that are going to be here, that we could really have the beginning of that. But for our students to see these people in real life and understand that they have a part of it is important. But beyond that, this is what I call the structurally functional part of the conference. The postmodernistic part of the conference is that's happening at the same time, the 8th and the 9th as well, is the AI in art, performing and finance and music. I mean,
Right.
that to me, I see that, I see that as a carnival, a constructive carnival of theater rolled into music. How do we use artificial intelligence to create new music? How do you use
Yeah.
artificial intelligence to enhance our culture? How do you use artificial intelligence to help us in esports or e-gaming, areas in which we are not, but areas that has a cultural piece that we could that is the embodiment of who our people is. So that is going to happen in parallel to this.
I wanted to segue a little bit before we go. We have 3 more minutes
Sure.
to ask you about the application of AI in culture,
Yeah.
because it's something people don't realize how powerful culture is in changing behavior. So, what role do you see AI playing in culture? And that would be my last question.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question to end, because listen, culture. I just came out of a all-day meeting where we were talking about how do we develop a university culture. The culture is first of all, you can't legislate culture. Culture can be
Yes.
top down, but culture is all about human behavior. And I have to tell you, I've been here as a leader since 2020, and I was looking at the body language of my colleagues, and we have a very young campus, very young folks that's here, and they're the future of the campus. So we were talking about culture today from a quality assurance perspective. And
Interesting.
I saw the energy of my young colleagues in the room versus when we talk about the culture of what we need the university to be.
Right.
I can't tell you how to behave, but I could study your behavior and I could make adjustments. And I think one of the things that artificial intelligence allows us is to gather data about each other, given permission, and use that to infuse the behavior of what we want to achieve. Now, I don't see that so much as co-workers. I see that instrumental of how we use human behavior in developing a culture on campus.
Right.
Now we know that we have to develop a culture, but we don't have to develop the mono culture. We don't have to develop the cable culture. We have to develop the Five Island OECS culture. Now we do that by gathering data from our students. We have students coming from everywhere. And could we run algorithms on the behaviors of those students and then predict what type of campus they would need, right? What type of, I'm going to be doing some work with a colleague of mine from Harvard, and we're going to be looking at what's the new university supposed to be. What
Wow.
is the ideal university as we look at the fifth industrial revolution? That cannot be what exists in right now. It has to be something that merges technology and innovation to basically build something that might be mortar and bricks. We don't know, but we want to basically find out.
Dr. Charles, thank you so very much for sharing your expertise, your experiences,
You're
both in
welcome.
academia, technology, and AI research. I'm really blown away at the interview because I know that our listeners have found this discussion both enlightening and moving the needle forward, where they can apply some information, because most individuals feel as though technology and artificial intelligence is way up there, is way, away from them rather than a part of their lives. And so I think that what you've done is really personalize the information and made it very palatable to our community. We'll be coming back again shortly to talk
Sure.
about some other aspects of artificial intelligence. So we didn't necessarily, we're not gone, guys. We're just signing off and signing back in again. Thank you so very much, Professor Dr. Curtis Charles.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Make sure you save the date, July 8th to the 10th, to be here in Antigua. We have 365 beaches. I know Barbados and everybody else have
Wow.
beaches,
Yeah,
but we
you
have
can share
365
as
beaches.
much. You have 1 minute, so go ahead and share as much about the
Yes,
conference.
absolutely. So the conference is going to be held in Antigua and Barbuda next year, July the 8th to the 10th. We have a pre-conference on the 8th where everybody who wants to know about generative AI is going to be a deep dive in generative AI. Then there's going to be a parallel to that, a ministerial roundtable, where ministers from the Caribbean in charge of digital transformation and education and technology will be talking about how do we move forward in this age and improve the Caribbean and diaspora. So mark it in July 8th to the 10th, 2024. We're giving you enough time. And we're going to be having more information about registration, but we want everybody to save the date. But let me just close with this. You use AI every day. Everybody use AI. If you have a smartphone, you use AI. If you have a cell phone, you use AI. And if you use Alexa, you are using AI. You probably tell Alexa more than you will really want to tell Alexa. But every time you use Alexa, Alexa is basically building a profile of who you are. You say, Alexa, put on the music. Alexa, why don't you turn down the music? Every time Alexa is using the cadence of your voice, to basically build a pattern of who you are, and you have no idea where that algorithm is going. Something to think about. So that's when we're gonna next time we're gonna talk about AI and surveillance. So that's a good teaser.
Yeah, that you're leading into my next question. And so thank you so very much, Professor Dr. Curtis Johnson. Guys, there you have it. We've had a deep dive. It has been expansive, it's been explanatory, and it's been growth enriching. Thank you so very much, Dr. Charles.
You're welcome, Doug. Appreciate it. Appreciate it anytime.